Okay, so thank you all for showing up. Both, I think do we have one person online?
Yes.
Okay, so we have one person online and we have you all here today, so we appreciate you taking the time. I recognize a few faces, so I think a few of you were at the last meeting. If you weren't, don't worry. We're gonna give you a recap and go over some of the things we talked about. And tonight really is to present some of the concepts and the things we've been working on to get your feedback and input, and I'll go over that in a few minutes. So again, thank you all for showing up. Before we get started and get into the meeting itself, just a couple housekeeping things we want to go over. This is for the folks who are online. If you're on Zoom, keep yourself muted. There'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions later on when we have the Q&A session, but if you could keep yourself muted so we can avoid background noise or anything that may be going on where you're calling in from, that would be great. And if you do have a question, raise your hand, and you can do that you can see it on the screen here by selecting the raise hand on the Zoom features. So just raise your hand and then we'll respond and let you unmute, and then you can ask your question. I also want to remind you that you can also put comments in the chat as well. You can ask questions if you want to keep a running track of some things while we're going through the presentation. You can do that as well, and we'll be monitoring the chat. So I think at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Jean, and she's going to give really a brief introduction, just kind of reminding us why we're here and setting the stage for the remainder of the presentation.
Well, as many of you know, the project that we are working on with Horsley Witten Group, we are very pleased to be working with. They've been a great organization to work with. We are working on, for the folks that may be new on the Zoom here, working on our Moshassuck River Preserve, which is one of many preserves that the Nature Conservancy owns and manages in the state. And one of the reasons that we have chosen this preserve for an accessible trail is the habitat. For one, it's a beautiful location. It has deciduous forest of hickory and oak, and maple and beech, and it's scattered throughout with glacial erratics, glacial boulders. They're very interesting to see. It has the Moshassuck River running through it, which we're hoping to obtain views of with the trail. It is located within high population density and in the Providence metro area. Hopefully will be open to many more people and can gain access with a shorter drive. We also hope that there's potential for a bus route, a bus stop perhaps someday, because it's fairly close to some bus routes at this point. We also have a good relationship or partnership with the Fairlawn Golf Course, whom helped us create a parking area that can accommodate, several cars. So that's sort of one of the reasons why we've chosen the Moshassuck River Preserve. I think that that probably explains why we chose the preserve itself. I guess I can try to introduce my team we team at Rhode Island, the Nature Conservancy in Rhode Island. I think most of you know here who we are, but any folks that don't know, we are a nonprofit environmental group, and we have chapters in every state, and we do a conservation work in the US and in many countries around the world. But right here in Rhode Island, we have a team that is working on preserve access. Our goal is to make preserves more accessible for folks with disabilities and impairments, and help them feel safer and more welcome at our preserves. And the team, I'd like to introduce our team. We have Cheryl Swinconik. She is a preserve manager, along with myself. I am Jean Cooper, also a preserve manager. We have Tim Mooney, who is here. He is our communications manager, and he's done a lot of the outreach for this project and will continue to do so, I hope. we have Lauren Miller Donnelly on Zoom, and she is our public access coordinator. She works with Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. So she has a foot in the door with them and a foot in the door with us. So she helps connect our agencies together and helps us work together in a partnership. And then we have Kevin Ruddock also on Zoom, who is our GIS specialist, who is an excellent map maker. So that's our team. And I think that's, pretty much what I wanted to say. So if you would like to learn more about our group, well, for the overall organization, you can visit nature.org. But you can also reach out to any of us with any questions and, input that we would love to receive from you in regard to this trail and its design, which we are now working on. And Horsley Witten Group will present to us the work that they are doing on the design. So I'll hand it off to you guys.
That's great. Thanks, Jean. I'm Brian Cooch. I probably should have introduced myself when I started speaking. Associate principal at the Horsley Witten Group. We're an environmental design and consulting firm. These are the types of projects that we really love to work on, and we're very passionate about conservation, preservation, restoration, and protection of places such as this one. I'll pass it off to you. Oh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. I'm Ellen, landscape architect with Horsley Witten Group. I'm excited to be working on the project.
Yeah, and Ellen's serving as our lead designer, so she'll be doing the bulk of the presentation, going through some of the concepts that we've developed for this meeting. So I think before we get into some of the more detailed information, just a reminder of where we've been as far as what we're doing for this project and where we're going. If you attended the meeting on September 21st, that's where we presented information and our data that we've collected, the site analysis, received feedback, some really good comments. We also had a survey that I'll go over briefly in a minute. And from that information, we then went back into our studio, working with our client to come up with the concepts that we'll be presenting tonight. And this is our second meeting that we would be having. Again, we're looking for input on what these different options are, or these different alternatives, and hoping we'll get some good feedback again, like we did from the first meeting. The agenda tonight would be, as I mentioned when I started, we'll be giving a brief recap, which would include the summary of the online survey that was completed. Ellen's then going to go through the conceptual options. We'll then look for your input. We'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll wrap it up. And I just want to remind everybody that we're not done yet. We still have task 3, which would be coming up with the final concept, some cost estimating. And from that, we would then move forward, hopefully with doing some design work that would then roll into construction. But we would be having another community meeting sometime in January. So again, keep that in mind. Like we gave you, I think, heads up last time that there'll be another meeting. Same thing here. So sometime in January, you'll be seeing some notification to let you all know that we'll be having that last meeting. And again, hoping everyone comes out, because this really is a project that's for the visitors, both local and beyond, for the Moshassuck Preserve. So now just really go over the survey quickly, and thanks again for anyone who did complete the online. I think we had about 19 respondents, which is actually pretty good. There was some good information that was taken from that. You'll see here, no surprise, you're all from Rhode Island who completed the survey, which is a good thing. And you different communities: Warwick, Wakefield, Uxbridge, Lincoln, Cumberland, but I think good representation from the surrounding community. The age of the respondents, I think we were just talking, Ellen and I, that it's a little surprising to us that it's 25 to 34-year-olds was the biggest number of respondents, then followed by I guess it was 65 to 74. But we didn't really get the 25 to 34-year-olds. I think we had 1 or 2 at the meeting, but it looks like we're getting some online, which is always good to get that type of feedback. The second question was, how often do you visit? It looks like a few times a year was the most popular. Oddly enough, the next, or what also had quite a few respondents were people who said they haven't visited yet, which is kind of good news too, that people are definitely interested in the project, even if they haven't been to the site. The last multiple choice was the question about mobility. And again, not surprising that most of the people responded that mobility does affect their enjoyment of the trails. And as Jean mentioned, that's really the main focus of this project, is to improve accessibility into this wonderful space and to let people of all different abilities and ages enjoy the preserve. And then the
Hey
last,
guys,
yep.
sorry to interrupt, but we don't see a screen share. Can you share your screen? There we go. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't think we need to go back through it, but can everyone, so everyone can see the screen now? That's good. All right. So now we're on the features of the preserve. So the words that you see that are the biggest are the ones that we heard the most or people wrote down the most. So again, not surprising, nature trails and river views. The other items were all things that people commented on, but those were the two biggest. So again, I think you'll see a lot of these things reflected in our options and the concepts that we'll present tonight. And then the last item is, what are you most excited to learn about at the preserve? And again, birds and animals jumped out. And again, I think there's an educational opportunity here as well for some interpretive signage and to let people know about some of the habitat that this preserve provides. So that's recap of the survey that we provided. We apologize for those if you didn't see the first couple slides. But I think based upon my description, you probably get the idea of the feedback we received. And I think at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ellen, to take us through the concepts.
Yeah. So still within the recap of the site that we were looking at, Moshassuck River Preserve, its general location, like Jean mentioned, northwest of Providence, kind of near the Lincoln Woods and some other areas that are wooded and vegetated, but also big centers of residents and area to more populated location. For this project, the main area that we were focusing on is this area circled in white. So the red outline is the boundaries, general boundaries of the park. Currently, the blue and yellow are existing trails, and the area that we're focusing on for trying to get this accessibility is really this lower area close to where the existing entrance is. So last meeting, we kind of went through all the analysis things that we've been through. So this map, I'm sure, looks like a lot of lines, but it's basically all of the information that we've been layering on top to inform us as we're making decisions. So if you could see here is the existing parking currently. The orange dashed are the existing trails coming through. Red, potential opportunities. The blue lines representing rivers, and the darker blue being floodway and floodplain. And then areas where there's steeper slope, boulders, and then areas of interest. On we're kind of looking at soils and some more things with water and topography. So last time we took each of these pieces and kind of broke it down a little bit more, but now we've been, as we were starting to look at these concepts, we kept them all together so that it can inform what we're doing or the different options that we're looking at. So we took this then and we tried to develop into two alternatives that we could use. Generally, or close to it, we were looking at where these red dashed lines were for opportunities for the two trails and how this could be two different options, and then how we're looking at connecting to the parking lot and going out. So just to jump into one of the options. So we're separating these into north and south. So this is, the north of this is to the right, so that it's how you enter the site. So right here is the existing parking lot, the existing golf course, like we mentioned. Can you guys see my hand from back there also? The existing golf course, and this orange dash underneath here is where some of the existing trails are, so they come out. The other lines, so here are where we'd be proposing improved trails, with gray really being more of a stabilized stone compacted path. brown representing where we would want to do some type of a lifted or boardwalk path, but try to, for most of this, meet grades that are below 5%. I think last time we talked about how you can meet accessibility at different levels, especially for trails, that there's the ADA, which is considered like urban type, but then there's some standards that are forest service accessibility. Our goal with this is to make it accessible as possible. So we're trying to meet those grades, which are 5% or less for this trail, which will play in when we look a little bit closer at the entrance here. So for this, you would connect down from the parking lot, cross where you currently do, where there's culverts and a lower path that currently washes out. That would be elevated into a boardwalk, which we'll go over. Go onto the stone dust or stabilized soil path near the large boulder that's there. Next to the existing seating area with plaque and stone steps, through the open meadow, out and then over towards one of the smaller tributary rivers where there'd be a little platform for people to look out over the river. In this, we've called out areas where there could be small seating areas. So where there's the purple circle where you could have 1 or 2 benches, or if it's say one accessible bench and then stones or boulders that can act as seating as well. And then the rectangles where we could have benches along the way. So if there's resting points as you're going out and then resting points as you're coming back as well too. And then this one would loop up and around and then connect back near that larger boulder and then back to cross the Moshassuck River. So that you'd still be keeping the existing trails in orange as they are, but these ones would be widened out a little bit and put to a stabilized surface to make them easier to walk on. So next we're going to zoom into this area that has the black box around it. Or, ooh, okay, this. So these are some of the images for the things that we talked about. So when you're coming out, just to highlight some of the places that you'd be coming through, that seating area that currently exists with the little plaque and steps up so that we could have the accessible path come right by here, have some seating that could be reached by it as well. And continue out to where there is a meadow. So a changed majority of the site is that oak hickory forest. So, and this is a pretty unique area where you see different vegetations, there'll be different insects and bugs coming in here. So coming through a unique ecosystem for this area. We would have a stream crossing, a smaller stream crossing in this location, where we would have to come up and over there and then out where you'd be looking over one of the smaller tributary rivers that eventually connects to the Moshassuck.
Before you continue, is there anything in the chat that I see we have 2? Just want to make sure this doesn't.
Any questions in there? No.
Okay, we're good.
Or they probably, we can't see your screen.
That's
Which would help. So this is that area that we zoomed into. So if you come back here, this area right up here near the parking lot and entrance. And looking at how we would try and access the site. So this is the existing entrance and parking area generally. This proposes to have ADA accessible, improved parking stalls that would connect out to a more formalized trailhead that would have orientation signage, as well as could have some educational signage and some little seating for when you're about to take off or come back. There'd be an improved trail for if there's an option for having the composting toilets in some of these areas, and then an improved path down. So this light gray dashed line is where the existing path is. How it goes down, it's too steep to be considered ADA accessible. So this would look at bringing the path out a little bit and wrapping it around to try and meet that accessibility, which would require some grading in this area, as well as raising up the elevation that someone would be crossing the river at. So if you see in the section down here, this dashed line, this dashed black line with the tan is the existing elevation. And here's where we would be proposing to incorporate a crossing. So it's using a boardwalk to kind of raise up where you would connect to make this path not as steep as you're trying to meet the locations down here. This gets it up out of the water, so it's not flooding, which is of course always good. That makes it a bigger structure, of course, for spanning these areas in this location. For this, as we've been looking at these, something we've been talking about is the river, and what we're doing with the river if we're making improvements for it. So for this scenario and where we have water is we'd be keeping the river where it is and not changing how it's coming through some of the structures in this location, which would require this boardwalk to be up a little bit higher anyway. So this is still looking at crossing at that same location, but changing where the trailhead is and adjusting a little bit how we would be crossing there. So we would flip the trailhead to the opposite side of the parking lot away from the golf course, which is down here. Similar type of thing, it would formalize it a little bit more, have wayfinding and educational signage, a little bench, and wrap the trail around and down further towards the existing crossing location, which is here. So in this one, because we aren't raising up the elevation that we're crossing the river at, we have to make it down quite a bit further so we have to grade out the path quite a bit, which is why there's more switchbacks in this location, and then quite a bit more cutting into the slope and things. So it would cause more disturbance to this location, but similar that this would be under a 5% graded. For this particular one, if you come up from this location, you could have a view down to near where the stone dam is, down towards the river before you come down the slope there and then cross the river. Because we are using these switchbacks to get a little bit further, we're able to lower the boardwalk a little bit, crossing a little bit more, so it's not as long, it's not as big of a structure. And then for this one, we were looking at if we did restore some of the river, so that would also have an effect on bringing the floodplain, the elevation of flooding during large storms down a little bit too. Instead of having the culverts, which would back it up and kind of like let things spread out, this would bring the elevations of that down a little bit and restore that as well. But there's complications with those as well, and how it would affect some of the floodplain above it. So just to see a comparison between them, we're crossing up here and some of the grading, how that expands, but helps with the shorter track here. For this one, gets a little bit lower, but would be quite a bit more disturbance as we're coming through in this location. But both of them under that 5% that we want to have good accessibility for. So alternative 2 or concept 2. So we've been calling this the north because the majority of the path and the crossing location is actually to the north, which is page right in this one. So the parking lot down here, when you look at that similar location that we were just looking at, the other side of the parking lot, to have the trailhead come off. We would make improvements and cross over the top of the stone dam, and then have the path come down and through where that large boulder is. Excuse me. From that, majority of this would be improving some of the existing trails for accessibility. So if we come down near where that plaque was, using the existing trail and raising up where we need to, where it's wet in certain locations, come off and wrap around where the wetlands or very wet area is, and out near some large boulders into the boulder area, and then connect back out to the existing trail and overlook the Moshassuck River further down. Similar to the last one is that we'd be planning out some seating areas. We could have an accessible bench, maybe another seating to go with it, a little bit more space, as well as spots where there's just seating placed where there might be a little bit more of a slope. So at the top of the slope coming up on either side, then there'd be a spot for people to sit at the very top of it and kind of spaced out so there's areas as you go along. This one, and then similar again, okay, and then similar for this one, and then actually this one is just a little bit shorter than the last one. So the last one was just about half a mile, and this one's a little shorter, as you can see up here, than the half a mile. Pretty similar, not a big difference between the two of them, but close to that. So just looking at some of those highlight areas as well. So when we come across that dam near some of the large boulders that kind of look like they're balancing there, you would be coming up higher, so you could create a little seating area near there. In between them, even if it's just a few benches or something, or educational opportunity. You'll be able to look out at some of the wet features and resource areas off to the side. Further back into the site where the trail currently doesn't go to, there's some also larger boulder areas that don't really look like they're balanced, but it's more like you're nestled into a bunch of different boulders, so it's different feelings you're getting as you're going through it. And then further down the trail would be when you're looking over the larger Moshassuck River right here, one of the bends as it starts to go around. And then looking at that main entryway again, so the existing parking lot, and again looking at flipping the trailhead away from the golf course, so you kind of feel like you're going into the woods first versus right now when it's kind of you go down next to the golf course a little bit. Encouraging some type of buffer, and on both of them we were looking at where water's coming on both of them, generally splitting if there's areas where it's currently ponding where we can include some vegetation, or if there's areas to capture some of that. But flipping the trailhead to the other side of the parking lot, because of us looking at crossing potentially over the dam, most of this is pretty flat sloped and easy to kind of just come through the woods here, staying at a higher elevation and then coming across the dam. Further down, I'll flip back. So further back on the other side where we're coming through, we would have to include some more walls or things to keep that path elevated when we connect back to the trail to try and keep some of those. So even though it looks like we're doing less disturbance on this side, it might be a trade-off on the other side a little bit where we would have to include some more. And then looking down at the section here, so this continues off of the page. If it was to continue out over the stone dam, you would still need railing or safety fencing on either side because of the drop on either side. There would be a bridge section that would span where the river comes through right now, or where it's reached. Then you also may need some type of an elevated or boardwalk section to make up some of the grades that are happening here. So this one helps with some of the accessibility, maybe more of a challenge, maybe a challenge based on the dam and some of the unknowns with that for some of the stability. So this is an older stone dam wall, very thick, but we would still need to do a little bit more to understand that, and would have some challenges related to accessibility with those things, and would still need structures for safety and some improvements along with that. So these are the two options, kind of overlaid, and this is just to demonstrate that we don't have to pick one or the other one. So if we wanted to, if we really liked coming out to the Moshassuck River, but we could still use the crossing down here, it's possible to still meet that accessibility without coming across the dam in this location. Or if we did like crossing up there, but for some reason we didn't want to make it out to the rivers, we're able to do a loop trail. It's really to show that these things aren't exclusive. You don't have to pick one or the other. If there's pieces of stuff that you like or don't like, we're able to kind of mix them together. And just to go over some images, which always help for things that would be included in both for the most part. So when I was saying those gray lines for more of a stabilized soil type of a path on the left, and for majority of the site, when we're saying boardwalk, we're thinking lower type of a boardwalk to get you over areas. So we want to avoid putting a lot of handrails because we're trying to balance, we want to balance accessibility with making people feel like they're in nature. So we don't want to, we want to try to have as minimal impact as possible.
And that, just go back to the image on the, I guess it'd be, if you're viewing at your left, shows what that handrail might look like too at the dam crossing.
Yeah.
That you would have the path, but that's what that represented in that cross section because of the wall for safety reasons. You'd be required to put some sort of barrier.
And just sections to show this, if we're trying to do a 5-foot wide stabilized stone path in some areas where there's locations or constraints, like we want to keep these trees or there's a big boulder in the narrows we would go down to is 3 feet at a pinching points and then come back out, but to try and make sure we're not getting rid of the trees that make the forest feel so great. And then also just for the boardwalk, to show that we try to keep that lower and just elevate it a little bit so that you can still see out and it feels open to the woods. For the river crossing, this would be a little bit bigger because we would likely have to elevate and you're over the open water for portions of that. So this would be a combination of using a bridge span in locations where the majority of the water is coming through most of the time. And then a boardwalk when we're crossing more wetland or floodplain. And you can kind of see the connection here, how it's the boardwalk up to a bridge for areas, but it'd be a combination of those. It would be a little bit bigger of a structure when we're crossing in those spots. And then the accessibility at the parking as well. So we want to be improving the material there, making sure that people can get to this great trail that we're building, and a few different ways that we would help stabilize that as well. Just to point out some of the areas which we had mentioned was with seating spots. So with the larger circles, which are on the 2 concepts here. So we would have the type of wooden accessible bench, which is something that we heard about last time that people were interested in. So that you'd still have the handles and things that make it easier to get up and get down. The surfacing would be improved and not turf, as it's shown in here. But this could be mixed in some of the other areas with seating that blends in. So if it's some type of stones or boulders that still have the flat surface, so it's a combination so that at each of the spots, you still have an accessible location, but it could still be kind of a group seating area as well. And then potential educational signage locations and topics. So we heard we're interested in birds and wildlife and some plants to hear about. So trying to group some of the signage if it's in with where these node or gathering areas would be as well. And where there's opportunity, like some of those very large boulder areas might be an opportunity spot, or where there's a change in ecology where you're not going to be seeing this in other parts of the woods also. So that's where we are right now with the 2 alternatives. And it would be great to get feedback if anyone has any thoughts about either of them, or if there's a preferred concept or something that they like about them.
And we can go back and forth if you want us to pull something back up.
Yeah, you need like clarification of what the concepts are. We had like a north concept, basically, and a south concept. Correct?
Yeah.
The north was the north part of the parking lot.
So south we had with the lower existing crossing. North was when we were crossing over the dam and we headed up to the Moshassuck River. The south one had kind of an A and B for the trailhead crossings. So it kind of had one near where the golf course is, near where the existing location is, and then one up on the other side. So it's that you could kind of, for this one, flip to either side.
So you're gonna do one or the other?
Right. Yes.
I mean, I know all of it. Going up by the river, I think. You go up that trail,
For
the existing trail that's there now, and you can run it parallel to the river. That's pretty cool. There's actually a bridge there now.
Yeah, small bridge there to go like a little wet area.
Parking spaces. How many?
We have 2 accessible ones shown on here. I forget how many are existing or how many people actually. I was gonna say.
Yep, you just know.
15 total, 2 accessible.
Yeah.
And this is based off of typical spacing with gravel lots. If it's not lined, it might adjust sometimes depending on how people park, but at least for this,
Yeah,
to get a count.
I think the plan would be not to pave it, to kind of
Yeah,
it's
right.
gravel, but to create the ADA spaces, something that's stable, that could be, people could get out of their cars if they have a wheelchair or.
Right, so going over the dam, you're gonna have to do a lot more work, because, I mean, you can go up there now and walk up, you can walk up on it, you know, it's not a big crossing area, but
Yeah, would,
say the accessibility is gonna be a lot tougher in your part.
we would probably have to go through a structural analysis first. And that
Because
would be,
below it's pretty good too, because you can see the water.
right, aesthetically, they're very similar, I think, when you to pass over either one, either over the culvert area or the dam itself.
Yeah, we walk that allowed.
So
Does anyone have an idea of what they might prefer crossing over, the dam itself or the culvert area and looking up at the dam? Or
Yeah,
go,
we got once, but I mean, it's just a nice aesthetic view either way. I mean,
At the bike path, they have, where you could walk right over the dam. It's really nice.
yeah,
And they break totally.
So to your accessibility question though, with the crossing of the dam, we initially thought it was the easier because of the fact that we don't have to get down to the low point. So it actually is easier to get to it from an ADA standpoint. The problem is getting across because there's that little bump that shows up in the cross section. That we didn't really think about that or account for that initially when we were just throwing ideas out. That requires that structure to be longer, and then the handrails become a little more complicated. And once we get across, that's where the accessibility isn't as easy, and then that's when Ellen
that's what I'm
points out.
saying. I mean,
So
to get up there, but I mean, to get
right.
what you've got there is a straight line. I mean, you're gonna have to do.
It initially felt like the path of least resistance, but the more you sort of dig into it, it becomes a bit more
I'm
challenging.
just looking at a cost factor too, because I don't know.
They all have their challenges, and
yeah.
I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer at this point.
Right.
Now, when we look at the structure of the dam, that could be prohibitive. It might not be able to support that level of work and that loading. But right now, Ellen's brought up the views. That's a really good point as well, that at the lower crossing or the south crossing, you get, especially in the fall when there isn't as much vegetation, you can really see that whole dam structure. So it's and you can see the water coming through it.
What's gonna happen to the existing path that's there now? It's just gonna let it grow over time.
I would assume we try and revegetate that and help that a little bit.
So you're gonna basically,
Yeah, well, for anything here, I need.
I was gonna say, or we remove culverts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, like here, yeah. Well, I think that'd be more conversations about maintenance access. That's what we were talking about, is that we would still need to get a car through there, or not a car, but carts or something like that too.
Like almost like a 4-wheel ATV, which we don't have yet. But we were thinking that maybe we might need something like that to get through, to maintain the trail, because, it will probably need replenishment of gravel, stone, dust, and that type of thing. Or we would contract out to do that, but it's still going to need maintenance. So to have a vehicle access, we might try to maintain that for that reason.
it looks pretty wide right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It does flood, unfortunately, during heavy wet periods. Hence the reason that it creates that like a flood zone there, and it would have to take extensive bridge and boardwalk to traverse it, to go across and get out of the floodplain.
Any comments from online? Are they still on?
No, I'm still.
We have 2 people online.
All right,
Okay.
yay.
For those of you who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put it right in the chat, and we'd be more than happy. If you have a preference of one option over the other, or I guess not really an option, but a trail path or connection or trailhead location.
Yeah.
I think along the river, in my being, walking it before. I mean, both of them are good, but I think that could be a lot more.
This option here.
Yeah.
You're saying once you get across the river.
Right.
Yeah.
This is nice.
to have that
Yeah.
observation over the river itself, the main,
Yeah,
the
'cause
main
we're
channel.
all parallel with the river, I mean, see lot more wildlife. You know, like I said, there's all sorts of, boulders along the way.
Yeah,
It's- And everywhere in there, I mean, if you walk all those paths, like I have, there's so much in there to see. But if it's just for a quarter mile, you know, accessible to me, I would do. Not that it's worth it.
it is.
No, it is. That's why we're having the meetings. Does
Exactly.
anyone else have thoughts on? I guess this would be the north concept, right? This is
Yeah.
north and then the south is.
And it's pretty easy to get into right now. You can go into that parking lot and walk in there. It's pretty accessible. I mean, it's not, well, no, I'm not to go in a little bit.
Right.
Not to do, if you go up along the river now, I think it's not accessible.
How many, is there a certain distance? How many feet before there's a bench? I know. we've been-
That's a good question.
Yeah, so right now, I'm just trying to have it take a little over 200 to 300 feet, I think it was. So 200 was resting areas for a certain area. So that's how it's, so these rectangles are spaced. There's some that's longer, like this is a longer section, but at least for majority was trying to go for 200-300. Most of it was like trying to do specific locations around if there's like a little uphill or something like that.
I believe that follows some guidance as well.
I think so.
So they
Yeah.
they have that for resting spaces if you're above 5%. So technically we don't technically we're below those, but we'd still try to include resting spots like that for it.
which is great.
Yeah.
And on this option here, you can see when you look at the orange lines that most of it is on existing trails, right? I mean, it's just the connect, right? It's the new piece that would be a new trail.
Yeah.
You can we walked it, it's walkable now, but it's not really laid out as a trail.
That is not laid out as a trail.
So
And it does have like a little boulder field,
Yeah.
sort of that this trail would have to go through. And as you can see, the brown boardwalk would have to accommodate some of that, or sort of between the wetland and the boulder field.
Yeah, there's basically a large boulder field back here, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So we're looking at for finding a location that would be between the resource and the big boulders, but would obviously need to raise in those locations.
We have a hand raised.
Kevin.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a comment in the chat.
Thanks, Kevin.
You didn't mention the cemetery. Will there be access to that? So the cemetery.
Let's so.
Oh, so actually it's right off of here. So we don't. The cemetery actually is, or the noted the area is over here. We would be planning to give the 25-foot offset that's recommended for that to make sure we aren't disturbing anything.
Yeah, so we would be same thing on this option. If you look at the orange lines, this has significantly more new, I guess not necessarily new trail, but that whole connection right here.
Yeah, this is all new basically. Yeah. And this is on existing, and then this would be a new.
And that would be turning before you get to what's that the designated cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah, to make sure that we're giving it plenty of space for that. But so all of the orange, which are existing trails, are remaining as they are, basically.
So I guess that area that's designated or that's been called into question as a cemetery, that's not really being impacted. We're keeping our distance, and in fact, with this option, the existing trail's closer to it than we would be.
Yeah, so this option would incorporate a little bit of a different habitat. As you can see, the open meadow there, which the other north concept does not include. And then crossing over the small brook there, as you can see, Ellen's pointing out, the boardwalk, a little resting area there. And then coming out onto, a little river overlook with the setting there is very, wetland-like.
Yeah.
I've sat there quite a few times, especially in spring, and it's quite the area for bird activity right there in that spot. So that was one of the reasons for choosing that area. And again, it has a beautiful setting, with very open understory of trees in boulders,
This does it justice.
and in the floodplain there of the brook, and avoiding, sort of the trail would go sort of between that, uh, cemetery in question area there and, as you can see, I don't know if you can tell by the dotted areas on that map that there's some wet areas there too. So it's sort of sandwiched between those two.
Yeah, and as we noted in the survey, birds was something that jumped out that people.
Yeah,
wanted.
right, yeah. I mean, there are obviously birds in other areas. I just happened to notice, just more species perhaps visiting that area, especially in the springtime.
And then obviously the meadow too would have.
And yeah, right. So that's,
It's
was a
really,
consideration in that option. Anyway.
it's really pretty cool because both of these trail loops are like really different feels. It's not like one's more wooded, more boulder rocks, where the other's a little more meadow, wetlandy.
Yeah.
So it's you kind of have those two options too. Any thoughts on this one? Sounds like we heard one vote for the north or the Boulder Loop. We'll call that the Boulder Loop, and
We'd love to be able to do it all, but
Yeah.
we need to pick
Like I
out
said, I mean, I don't think
options.
it's a bad option.
Yeah.
what about the trailhead options? Keeping it kind of where you're accessing now, or what do you guys think about at the end of it, switching it to the other side of the parking lot?
I'm gonna wait away from the golf course.
Yeah.
Away from the golf course, yeah.
I think that's a better option.
I think with both options, we were trying to get away from the golf course as much as possible with the path.
Exception of that one, yeah.
Yeah.
But even with the path, we're trying to pull with the switchback to try to pull people away. But as we said, like this is mix and match, so any one of the loops would work. So wherever we put the boardwalk, if we want to be on the north side, that would work with this option as well. And same thing when you get across the river, you can go either north or south.
And with this plan, I know Horsley Witten Group has done a great job in laying this out and trying to maintain that less than 5% slope as they laid this out, and that will help people in wheelchairs, whether they're motorized or non-motorized, to be able to maneuver through much better, I believe. And that's closer to the actual ADA standards.
Yes, below 5% is the ADA. It's just that if you have a trail that you want to have accessible, there's forest standards sometimes where you can go above 5% for a certain distance before you need resting areas and things like that. And it's considered trail. If the trail is for recreational purposes, then it could be considered to those standards.
Yeah, and for the surfacing, we're looking to meet forest standards too, not necessarily ADA guidelines.
Yeah, right, exactly. This trail isn't being designed specifically to ADA standards. We're trying to get as close to some of that as we can.
Very consistent with what the Forest Service is doing with their trails and the surfacing. So certainly accessible and wheelchair accessible and all of that. Just even the surfacing, I think, would need it, but we're not striving to.
Yeah.
It's a stricter.
Yeah.
More invasive for something like this. Yeah, the ADA guidelines.
Oh.
They're more for like the
Oh,
built environment.
exactly, right.
So the
Right.
US Forest Service guidelines are more for the
For,
natural environment,
for natural,
right? That's really the big difference.
Is there going to be like a little shelter or pavilion type thing, like if children went in there with a school or something and it's raining or something?
it's a great suggestion. Thank you. This is what we're looking for.
It's in,
It's
in here. I got that in North Conway.
Oh.
Inside of it. It was about some accessible path.
Oh,
And now that we're looking at all this, I noticed
starting to
these
look around.
things.
Oh, very
It's
good.
uncertain.
Yeah. Oh, very good. All right.
Do you know which one? Does it say which one?
Favorite hikes of a mountain Everest.
It was north of North Conway, but it mentioned a pavilion. So that if someone were in there and maybe if it's a thunderstorm or something.
Or, if it doesn't work perhaps exactly here, we could possibly put just a cover over a bench or two or something like that.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not signing anything.
I know that, I had spoken with someone and, with a group of people and they, that organize group trips and they love to have, that type of thing at the beginning of the trail so they can assemble everyone and
Right.
sit them down and discuss what's going on, plan the walk.
There's been a little pavilion with some picnic tables or chairs around that chair. And they get a lot of smooching.
Yeah. That place.
Well, the one cool thing you kind of have almost like that built-in outdoor classroom that the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts built that, right? This little stage seating area.
I believe so.
Yeah.
In front of the
Actually,
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been
Yeah.
there as long as I.
But they were trying to figure out the history.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of I could like envision that might be a spot where if you wanted to do something covered, that would be a good,
Yeah,
a
that's
good
right.
location.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because it already has a lot of human structures in it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't detract too much from your experience in the wilderness, if you had something like that there.
It definitely already feels like a gathering area, or it
Yeah.
seems like it either
Yeah.
way. That's great. Thank you.
We decided that you want.
Yeah.
Could you vandalize?
How long does it take to do something like this? I mean, there's so much that goes into it.
That's a good question. Yeah. This project will need to go through another design phase, I'm sure, and permitting process before, and then it will have to go out to a bid for construction and it all depends too on who is available to construct, who has it in their schedule or their
Right.
time frame to do that. It could be a year, it could be 2 years. It's really difficult to say right now. We also have to fundraise for this project as well. So that may take us some time. It's really not that easy to give you a real
Right. I am.
time for product completion. But we're
Yeah,
moving along.
I think your estimates are good. I think if the funding was in place and the permitting, like a year design permit construction seems reasonable. I don't think the construction will be that.
Yeah.
I think you'd be able to, I'd say between like the 3 to 6 month window, you probably could get this all built if everything, depends on the structure, what we're doing, and
After
the
it's-
culverts.
Right.
Right.
And did,
Yeah.
And-
After it's permitted, all that, like
Yeah.
shovel in the ground. But I think permit design permit construction, like a year would be probably shortest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't see
Can't
like,
imagine you have much problem getting permit the land that you own.
Well, it has to go through the state
Yeah.
for
Oh,
for
I know.
wetland permitting. And that-
yeah, it's gonna be the wetlands
Yeah.
permitting. It's the challenge of what we decide to do with the culverts.
and even though it looks small, the Moshassuck River is pretty, like,
Oh, yeah.
substantial. Yeah.
Any comments or thoughts on removing the culverts? and opening that up. So then basically that road would go away and you improve the river flow, because right now the culverts are a pinch point. And it actually does overtop the road, I think, during really.
It does, overtop the, by a foot and a half or sometimes, with that trail.
If you remove it, what would you have to build a bridge over the bridge?
So, yeah, it would be the same. It'd be this, that actually the one right there. you
So,
showed.
either way, because it is a large river, we'd have to have a section that's a bridge, because there's a floodway. So
Yeah.
because it gets such higher velocities coming through a specific area, if we leave or take down the culverts, it just changes where you put that, just based on what the topography is doing right now.
Would it cause flooding further down the bridge?
No, not from our initial modeling, we were finding, because part of it is from we have hydrogeologists who did the modeling for it, but hydrologists who did the modeling for it. So I can't speak to all the technical for this, but like basically it's holding it back. Like a lot of times it's holding it back. It's not like you're suddenly, so like as it rains, it's not like it's like something bursts and you're suddenly, yeah. It's that you're not like suddenly releasing it all at a certain point, and
It's not bold.
yeah.
I just didn't know the flow was like, if she was saying that when you get rain and that flood.
Yeah, and that's why
It's holding back so much that it's preventing it. It's going downstream.
No, the preliminary analysis indicates no, that you wouldn't have a problem with downstream flooding by taking the culverts out.
yeah, and
I actually have a question, because I hadn't thought of this before, but if you remove the culverts, right now those culverts are sort of holding the bank steady and the water's going through them. But if you remove them, is it going to begin to erode the sides? And will it make it deeper, or maybe make it shallower? I mean, I'm trying to imagine, but
the goal would be to restore that back to thankful with, or like further down the streams, more naturalized areas where the stream is just kind of going through. It'd be to restore it to that state similar to the cross.
yeah, so it would widen.
Yeah, so it'd be wider, than we wouldn't just like rip the culverts out and then like leave
It'd be-
everything.
Yeah.
And it would be a little different than what's shown like there too.
Oh, yeah.
It would be, well, it was only like, for what they were looking further down, 12 feet or so,
Right.
like it wasn't gigantic. So if you're out on site and you walk a little further down the stream where it does get a little naturalized, that would be the goal of what we would want to restore that to.
Yeah, it wouldn't just, I guess the point is, it wouldn't just be a channel. We'd be looking to create, a natural rivers.
Real further down. It's about 11.
Right. And there's wetlands here too,
Yeah.
so.
In the state of Rhode Island right now would like to keep the wetlands as they are. So that's one of the challenges. Yeah, if we were to try to restore the stream to its full bank width, or to reestablish it as a stream as it once was before all the structure was put in, the dam and all this, that is a big challenge.
Yeah, we wouldn't be looking at the
Right.
dam for this. It would
Yeah.
just be the culvert, but that is the trend, that a lot of these things are being opened up and they're restoring, because it provides better habitat, and it's a healthier option long term for the river.
It allows for fish passage, for example, brook trout. There have been brook trout seen in the lower river. So there's potential that there could be passage with that type of opening of the channel. But that is.
You have to do the bridge over the dam, that road that you wanted, the access road.
Yeah, that'd be gone. Yeah, oh yeah.
But the boardwalk bridge would be in its place
Right.
in this option. We'd be, and as this one shows, it by taking the culverts out, it allows that to be a little lower, right? Because you lower the flood elevation, because the culvert is holding back water, so you during it rains, you get it's not a huge difference, but
So that makes a difference. Too many to think about.
I mean,
well, as long as I guess
I think you know best, really,
Yeah.
once you get in there.
But if you're talking about returning it to its natural state, then you would take out the culprits to allow the river to flow like it used to.
Typically what we say at meetings like this, the biggest thing is there anything that you don't like? It feels like everything you've seen, we haven't heard, right? Like, we don't think that's a terrible idea.
Oh, you concerns, you know,
Yeah,
any kind of type
concerns.
of concern that you might have with any of this, really.
My concern would be, my concern would be the integrity of the dam. If we were to go over that.
Oh, yes, we would have to do a study. We would have to hire out, a contract out for engineers to do a complete study of the structural integrity of that dam. If we were to choose to go that route.
We share that same concern.
Again, I mean, for me, I know that area well. It's awesome. To have that ability for somebody that doesn't have the ability to do and see nature.
That's what we want. And we just think this is such a beautiful place. And it has potential for this type of trail to be put in.
People that things are getting more accessible because so many people can't. You know, I know a man with a stroke and he just walks around the parking lot at Lincoln Woods because that's what he can do.
And there's also just, it's not only the accessibility too, it's opening it up to people who might not go in up, like,
Right.
they might not feel that, might not be what they do, hiking, like they
Right.
think it's more hiking trails. When you have that, it kind of opens people up to these beautiful spaces and hopefully, you know, helps with the long-term preservation of them, because now they, just like, you know, you guys do, and you come out, you know, people who are more familiar with the site. And those people, those 6 people who said they haven't visited yet, but it sounds like once we put this in, they're going to visit. So that's part of the whole, I
Right,
think, goal
exactly.
right here from the conservancy
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
I've never been there.
Oh.
She's been in Lincoln forever.
You need to go.
But you do get a little put off if you have any, physical disability. And 1 4
Yes.
if you're done.
Or we just heard people saying that how much it grows in the summertime.
Yeah, oh, the vegetation. of the
Yeah,
tree.
is sometimes, I don't want to say intimidating, but not sure, well, I don't know if I should be going in there, type of thing, so.
Yeah, there's that.
Yep.
I used to do a lot more of that type of walking, but I found that a lot of the paths have got roots. And
Yes, the very uneven,
Yeah,
you know, boulders and
it's
rocks.
a
And
hazard for me now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't years ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
So that would be taken care of with this nice smooth stone gravel surface.
Yes, we look for that wood Something.
So we just include the sign towards the end. So as we were talking about improving the trails, more ways to get involved, and always help out with the park or the preserve, excuse me, as we do build these trails with vegetation, things like that. And then if there's anything else that you didn't feel comfortable sharing, or you're driving home and you start thinking about, you're happy to contact us, TNC, or we have a survey online that has some little images of these concepts that you're able to go take a look at, and give us any other feedback or thoughts. They're pretty open-ended questions, but if there's something else you think of or know someone else who you'd want to take a look at them and give some of their feedback to, then be happy to share this.
This is your homework assignment.
Yeah.
And if there's
It's not
another,
a test, it's just a survey. Yeah, we would like you to complete it too, even if you were here at the meeting, feel free to go in, because it allows you to kind of pick which option you think you like the best, and please let other people know.
have any of you taken this survey?
Did one just before coming here. I
Right,
don't know that
okay.
it was,
So that was probably
it was a previous one.
Oh, so did you change it?
We
Modify?
updated-
You
we
did
updated.
modify it.
Yeah.
So we know,
Did
we
you
know
know?
she didn't do her homework in school, and so. the day it was due.
And I thought,
I was the same way, so that's what I was, like, oh, I didn't do the survey, I'm heading to the meeting, I'll do it now.
At least you did your own.
Yeah,
So
so
we've
this one
got-
is updated with, it just has like little images of the concepts and just
Right.
like a.
Yep.
Okay.
type of
Yeah,
thing.
Alan just put it's real quick Google form thing,
Yeah,
5 minutes.
yeah.
It's gonna be really quick, but please let other people know, because we did like getting the results from the first one. It's definitely helpful.
Excellent. And if there's any other avenue that you would like to give us some feedback or input, can let me know. I think that you may have my email address.
We have Rhode Island at TNC.
Rhode Island at tnc.org is our general, email address, and that will go to us. Go to me, go to the team that's working on this project. So Rhode Island at tnc.org if you ever want to send us an email of your thoughts.
Yeah, and I know we skipped over real quick, but like we said, we're gonna take this and then we're gonna come to a final concept together and then come back with what the final concept is. So all this input, however you spread, if you get more, we'll go into that.
So come back again.
Yeah, in January, sometime in January.